A liar ran for president in 2016 and they almost got elected. This seems like the best time to talk about when the god of lies ran for president and left chaos in his wake. The Vote Loki miniseries by Christopher Hastings, Langdon Foss, and Paul McCaffrey presented a startling scenario. What if a known liar and actual supervillain ran for president, and what if they almost won? This is a familiar premise to comic book fans who saw Lex Luthor sworn into the office of president in DC Comics in 2000. He was a ruthless and immoral real estate mogul who somehow convinced people to vote for him. The American people looked past his past crimes and actual convictions and let him become president. And thankfully, this is fiction and it would never have happened in the real world. Of course, this was fiction, and in this cautionary tale, the president presided over major international crises and caused things to get actively worse. Thankfully, people took this lesson to heart and made sure never to vote for a villain. But could this happen at Marvel? Well, it all started with a terrorist attack. Hydra was on the rampage, and Loki was looking to mend their image. Sure, they'd spent literal centuries being the bad guy, but why couldn't they be the good guy for a change? Of course, this was an election year, and people wanted to know, who would the god of lies vote for? He said all politicians were liars, and if he were a politician, he'd lie too, but you'd enjoy it. I know what you're thinking, but you have to be a natural-born citizen to become president of the United States, and Loki's, well, an Asgardian, or a frost giant, or maybe he's Norse. Regardless, he's not an American. Is he? Turns out Asgardians get reborn so much that once he was born in Maryland, so he's technically an American. Now, he has a birth certificate that legally proves this, although he does say later that he is lying about his birth. What this means, however, he says, is up for the courts to decide. The biggest potential wrench in their plans is Daily Bugle reporter Nisa Contreras, who was there during the Hydra attack and has been following their rise to infamy. So naturally, Loki invites her to see the campaign and meet his staff, including his sister, head of security, Angela. Loki explains that they are ready to become whatever kind of leader America needs, be that man, woman, or literal god. And Loki doesn't shy away from his record. He says he's in favor of nice, innocent children and against horrible terrorists like those in Latveria during the current civil war happening in that country at the time of this comic. He says that he's neither Democrat nor Republican, and he has literally fought the Hulk before. And sure, he lost every time, but how many other politicians can say they've actively fought monsters on behalf of others? The whole campaign is seen as a joke by talking heads on TV. But it becomes a lot less funny when Loki actually fills stadiums with his rallies. His supporters hang on to his every word. Others question their morals, their intelligence, their mental health. But Loki says they will make America sane again. So of course, it's up to Nisa to point out that some of Loki's followers are actively crazy cultists. This potentially bad press forces Loki to hold a press conference to admit they do have a cult, because they did say they were a god. And freedom of religion is one of the cornerstones of the United States, which you would think people might abandon him now, knowing that he's connected to basically white supremacists. But it turns out people love his tell it like it is attitude. He considers the press the enemy, even as he plays along with the media, going to the Iowa State Fair and meeting the mainstream candidates. Throughout all this, Loki doesn't seem to have any kind of platform, other than insulting people and telling lies. But when pressed, they say, well, yeah, America shouldn't be involved in foreign wars. Let Latveria handle Latveria. But all the while, Loki is going outside of proper diplomatic channels and actively manipulating events in order to benefit them in the election, something that Nisa finds out. For any normal candidate, this would be the end of their political career. But for Loki, it just makes them more popular. Then there was that time a really obvious potential assassin got past the Secret Service and made a half-hearted attempt at taking him out of the race permanently until Angela yeeted him away. And if all of this seems a little suspicious, almost as if he planned it all, Nisa Contreras proves that it's actually true, to which his followers say, yeah, but we knew he was a liar, and also, it's for the best. And their hateful rhetoric spills onto the streets, causing opponents to get violently angry. I remind you, this is all fiction, and hopefully something like this would never happen in the actual United States. Again. But if it were to, I would hope that the nation's leaders would be like those in the comic who realize there's a good chance that an actual god of lies could be in the most powerful office in the land, so they hold a bipartisan vote to unanimously strip some of the executive powers to prevent him from just causing an international incident. I guess it really is just fiction. But in this fictitious world, when it looks like there may be a chance that this liar wouldn't actually take office like his followers believe they would, there is actual chaos and riots. And again, this is all fiction. Nyssa confronts Loki about all this and says, do you realize the effect you have on people and how they hang on to your every word even when you don't mean it? And they say they don't really mean anything wrong by it. They just like getting power. So at her suggestion, they do something that they just hadn't been willing to do up till now, which is take actual questions from people and have an actual town hall. And it turns out even their followers don't know what they want or what they stand for. Loki says, I like lying. I want to be president. I am not evil anymore. Nyssa says, it's not enough to have a platform of just, I hate people who aren't us. And this causes Loki to snap on national television, something that, again, should ruin any normal politician. And because even a fictional world has to follow some kind of logic, it does ruin Loki's chances. Sure, they win a few states, but they aren't elected president. My math isn't amazing, but if I figure this correctly, even on the low end, this would mean that in 2016, the Marvel Universe had a Democratic president. Fiction. So what does the God of stories, nay, God of lies, nay, God of evil, do when finding out that they lost their chance at taking supreme power in the US? Do they cause riots? Do they fight back? Do they deny it in the press? No, they call their opponents and graciously concede. Loki wasn't kidding when they say they're not evil anymore. This probably was just a parable, a story to teach people to watch out for their politicians and those who willfully lie to them. Loki would not want you to elect someone who is a known liar, an actual criminal, a villain, someone who hates others who are not them, and who has cult-like followers. And hopefully you would take that advice, because it would be horrible to see that happen again in the real world. That's why it's important to tell and retell this story.